Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. I hope everyone had a happy Easter. Today I have some subscriber-submitted encounters out of that great state of Mississippi. Before we get into those, though, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. Merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost you a cent. Click that like button. It takes less than a second. And please, leave a comment. Why? Well, because these things, they really do help and they genuinely matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's subscriber-submitted encounters from that great state of Mississippi. Shall we? Today's first subscriber-submitted encounter out of that great state of Mississippi. Hey Jeff, how are you? I'm scheduled to retire in 6 months, but I took a leave of absence shortly after my encounter, which will postpone my retirement. I've heard stories and gotten calls for years, and I just chalked it up to misidentification or Sasquatch, which I've seen plenty in my career. My encounter happened as I was responding to a call. I knew the residence of the caller, which I cannot disclose, due to a tragic mauling that happened years ago, which my supervisor at the time told me that it was one of the worst crime scenes he had ever seen. So the call was of a couple of guys stalked by a couple of large coyotes as they were trying to finish loading their truck for their customer for their move. I reached the property off of Old Taylor Road. It was 8 p.m., relatively getting dark. I had all of my lights on, so the area was extremely well lit. I exit the car with my long rifle at hand. I went to the shed where they barricaded themselves in. I was able to get them to come out. I asked them about the resident that lives there. I was told that they were moving, and they hadn't been on the property for days. They asked me if I could stay as they finished up. It'd only be about 30 minutes or so, so I obliged. They finished up and headed out. I walked back to my patrol car, which was about 20 yards away. I started getting this uneasy feeling like I was being watched. I get into my patrol car, start my report. As I'm doing that, I heard this guttural growl. I look up to see this Dogman that looked like the Van Helsing one standing 15 feet in front of my car. I put my cruiser in reverse, and I was about to proceed. There was one in the rear. Then we boxed in and slowly approached my vehicle. My long rifle was less than a foot away, but it was secured, so it would have taken me a few seconds to unhinge it, and I felt I did not have enough time before they would be on top of me. As it got feet from me, I turned the siren and PA to the radio that caused a screeching noise. It put its raccoon-like hands over its ears to cover them and leapt off into the brush. I took off to the main road with the emergency lights on, speeding all the way back. I always thought that victims were not seeing what they said, convincing them that it was something else. Well, everyone, I am truly sorry for what you have gone through and not believing you. I can tell you I do believe at this point now. Thanks, Jeff, for giving me a platform to share this encounter on. Guys, every once in a while, I get subscriber-submitted encounters that are paranormal or Bigfoot or something that is I guess, not classified, that falls into the humanoid-like cryptid, but kind of still unidentified. This is one of them, and it is quite terrifying. Hey Jeff, my name is Pam, and I live in the northeastern corner of Mississippi, less than 10 miles from Tennessee and Alabama state line, and 70 miles from that infamous Taylor, Mississippi, as well as 10 miles from Pickwick, Tennessee, where one of your subscribers who has told his encounter lives. My granddaughter, who is 10 years old, had an encounter this past Saturday night with a cryptid that I hope you can identify for me. It wasn't a Dogman, werewolf, or Bigfoot, but it was a cryptid. Let me describe what happened and what she witnessed. At around 11 p.m., we returned home from the county fair here in Alcorn County, Mississippi. My home is approximately 6 miles from the town in a rural area containing lakes, trees, fields used for anything from tomatoes to cotton. My land is almost 20 acres. We have our home, a barn, a shed, a lake, about 200 yards from my house, and the rest are trees with a few cleared spots. Anyway, back to Saturday night. My granddaughter decided to walk outside to find her kitten before she went to bed. My husband and I were already in bed, and why she decided to go outside without waking one of us up shocks me, but she didn't. She didn't even wake us up when she came back in. She did get in bed with us and slept with us that night and the next night. However, the next morning while fixing breakfast, she walked into the kitchen and said, "Mama Pam, y'all have some kind of strange dog out here." I asked her what she was talking about, and here is her response. "When I went outside to find Kitty, I started to walk to the front yard and I saw something really big and really white. I thought it was a dog, but when I got closer, it looked more like an old bald-headed skinny grandpa. He was walking on his hands and legs, but then it got up and just walked on its two back legs like it was looking around until it saw me. Then it ran toward the barn. Mama Pan, I ain't never seen anything run that fast." I know my eyes were as big as saucers, Jeff, because I listen to your channel religiously, and I knew what she had seen wasn't anything from around here. She went on to tell me that it was very skinny, again bald, and looked like it had trouble even walking on all fours, making it hard for her to believe it could run so fast. I told her what I thought it was, and that I couldn't believe she didn't come in screaming. She said at the time, and in her 10-year-old mind, she didn't consider it harmful because it was so frail, and it seemed to have a hard time walking. But she did say that when it took off toward the barn, it was running lightning fast. She said that's when she got nervous, when she saw how fast this creature could actually run. She hurried back in and got into bed with my husband and I. I know she's telling me the truth because she has never been exposed to anything that would even remotely give her the idea of this story. Not to mention, she slept with me and my husband the next night as well. She's not a kid who makes things up. She's a down-to-earth cheerleader, soccer player, softball player, just an all-around well-rounded kid. What do you think she saw, Jeff? And have you ever heard of these creatures anywhere else? Around Mississippi, Tennessee, and Alabama area? I know you can understand my worries, seeing as you have a little girl of your own. She has a four-wheeler and a bicycle and other outdoor vehicles that I'm scared to let her go off on anymore. Are we in danger? Thank you for reading this. Share it if you'd like. I look forward to hearing back from you. I'm too scared to go out at night by myself. If I have to go outside, I listen for sounds of the crickets and pray that it's okay. If you drew a line from Taylor to Cott County, Tennessee, it would run straight through my town. so I have no doubt there are dogmen around here. They've been spotted in Taylor, which is 70 miles west, and Pickwick, which is about 10 miles northeast, but I've never heard anything resembling what my granddaughter saw. Thanks, Jeff, and I hope all is well. God bless you and your daughters. Keep up the good work. All right, so the granddaughter really didn't give a lot of detail, and it's not her fault at all. A brave 10-year-old. I mean, I think my daughter's brave for going to the Conjuring house with me. This little girl is definitely brave going outside in a rural, remote area, like Pam described. Now, she did give us some information. It was bald, it was tall, skinny, and it walked quadruped and biped and was fast. Now, there was kind of no color given, if it was dark, light, whatever, or if it had clothes or anything that resembled clothes. So my guess, possibly a crawler or a feral person, but I'm leaning more toward the crawler. If it were a feral person, I'd almost say that she would probably say it looked like a human, but creepy. I don't know. But a terrifying encounter for this woman's granddaughter to have in her own property. I would be setting up some trail cams around my home. And I like how she mentioned, she said, "Grandma, y'all got some strange looking dogs around here." Because it ran very similar to a dog. So that means I'm thinking crawler, because if it was a feral person, it would really look very awkward, even though she did say it was awkward, but it would look just more or less really kind of stupid looking. And I think the little girl would say, "Hey, I don't think this. I think some weird guy was stalking me, Grandma." But I think it was a crawler. And, what do you guys think? Leave that in the comment section. Let's jump into today's third Mississippi subscriber experience. Hey Jeff, I know this channel is centered around Dogman and other cryptid creatures, but I have a disturbing encounter to share. I'm a hunter from central Mississippi, at the beginning of the pine belt that hides who knows what in many unexplored woods. A few years ago, on my way back home, there is this wolf-like creature sitting on the side of the road, lying down without a care in the world. We have plenty of coyote packs here in Mississippi that hang around cow pastures and farms, but this was no typical coyote or wolf. This thing was larger than a wolf, but lean and muscular, and was the definition of an apex predator. One thing that stood out was its ears that stood on the top of its head like a Doberman, and its grayish coat and black mask. I have never seen a wolf here in Mississippi, but the elders always speak of a swamp or red wolf. Looking at the behavior of wolves, they're very shy unless provoked, but this creature had no fear and stared back at me like I was in its way. I honked the horn and it jumped to its feet in an aggressive stance and stood its ground like a lion would. The next night I came through the same road and the creature was lying in the middle of the road like it was its den. It got up slowly and walked off like it owned the road. This creature knew he was the most dangerous thing there because he stared right at me as I watched in amazement. I found your channel because of the encounter, and I've heard a few encounters that are close to mine. Some people believe these events are not real, but I am going to tell them, like an elder once told me. When you're in the woods, they know it. When you're there to hunt, they also know. It's no telling what's in those woods because we humans moved in on them. The creature has not been seen lately, but there were animals mangled beyond recognition in the woods for some time. My cousin even had a dog with a plug bitten out of its thigh, like its flesh was butter. There are plenty of pets missing, and this is due to the woods being cut down and habitats being destroyed. This beast has nowhere else to go, so there's no telling what will be forced out of the woods. Your friend C. To me, what the gentleman just described sure sounded like a Dogman. Large, wolf-like creature, not a care in the world. Bigger than a wolf, ears at the top of its head, a grayish coat, and a black mask kind of on its eyes. That would be very cool to see. A Dogman with kind of like that bandit looking eyes. So besides what I got in my hand here, that pretty much does it for subscriber submitted encounters out of Mississippi. What I do have is my friend and the friend of the channel, Luke's encounters. I'm going to share with you all the first 2 emails I ever got from Luke, which really put Taylor, Mississippi on the map for me. You know, I'm friends with Dark Waters, and like I said, I don't listen to other people's channels unless I'm directed to. And I haven't listened to all of James's encounters on his channel. I've heard his experience, and obviously the Lockett Ranch, which, by the way, is not in Taylor, Mississippi. Some people think it is, but it's not. Also, the ranch is underwater. It does not exist. I had an email, actually, that I didn't share because the guy was just talking about his journey through Taylor and Oxford, saying that he was looking for the Lockett Ranch. I wanted to email him back. What made you think Lockett Ranch is in Taylor? Because Dark Waters had his encounter in Taylor and did a story called the Lockett Ranch? Go figure. Anyway, this really put Taylor, Mississippi on the map for me. And it really made my heart extend to Luke and his family. And I have a good friend now because of it. So let's get into it. Hey Jeff, first let me start off by saying our property is only a few acres in Taylor, Mississippi. We've had the property for 50 years, I believe. My grandfather at the time was a handyman, doing odd jobs for people, and he also worked in the town's grocery store. At the time, my grandfather, George, was 22. He would get up at 4 a.m. to walk 2 or 3 miles each way since he didn't own a vehicle. He did this every day for 3 years. Then he met my grandmother and they started dating, so he would get off of work and head to her house, which was 1 mile in the opposite direction of his. Like any other day, he would leave her house 2 hours before it got dark. As he would head home, he would cut through a trail that would cut his trip down by half. So, one evening, he was heading home, cutting through the trails he took so many times before. He was about 1 mile or 2 into the woods when he felt something was off. He felt like he was being watched. So as he's walking, he heard something in the distance moving, and he stopped. It was said as it was getting dark, he had no type of light other than some matches So he started to rip a piece of his shirt off and put some dry leaves into it and tied it onto a stick. Then he took some tree sap and applied it. While this was going on, the sound of something approaching was getting louder. As it was only a few yards away and it was almost completely dark, he would attempt to light his makeshift torch with the last 4 matches he had. Finally, he was able to get it ablaze, and it lit the area around him. Standing 20 feet from him was a monster, 8 feet tall, with a head 3 times the size of any wolf known to men. Mouth overcrowded with teeth, arms long past its knees, backward, legs dark gray in color, with a really pissed off look, like it had wronged him, and it was going to rip him to shreds. He stood there looking at this demon's fingers with over-exaggerated 3-inch nails. Then it let out this horrific growl as saliva dripped from its mouth like it had rabies. It charged at him, taking a swipe. He was able to get out of the way and press the torch to the side, burning it badly. Its fur caught fire. It screamed in pain. It sounded like a woman being butchered and a dog. It took off running. So did my grandfather. For 30 minutes, his lungs burned, labored. He had a 1/4 mile to go, and he wasn't going to make it. His torch was almost out. He was able to extend the longevity of the torch as he was resting, trying to catch his breath. A few minutes went by, and he heard a loud roar in the distance, and the creature bulldozing its way towards him. He takes off, running for his life. He sees his house in the distance. The creature closed the gap as he expected. Accepted the fact that he was about to die, tears pouring down his face. He was yelling for his dad, my great-granddad, and everything he had before he collapsed from exhaustion. He came to find himself in his house. His father was in the kitchen at the time, the window facing the woods, hunting rifle at the door. When he had heard his son, he saw a light and a body on the ground and a massive animal less than 15 yards away closing in. Without thinking, he grabbed his rifle, firing 2 shots, shattering the window at this creature, hitting it in the shoulder, quickly chambering another round, hitting it in the chest, causing it to flee back into the woods. That is the first encounter that started my family's terror. There are many more. When Luke reached out to me, he said that he had 3 generations of family members that had experienced these creatures. And as Luke and I got to know each other, I said, Luke, brother, I said, you have 5 generations of family that have had these walking wolves, and that's what his family calls them, walking wolves. These walking wolves had an impact on 5 generations of your family. And he said, what do you mean, brother? And I said, your great-grandfather saved your granddad's life by shooting through that window. 2 generations right there. His father, which we'll get into next, had his fair share of experiences. Luke has as well. And Luke's children have had their own experiences with the walking wolves, on top of seeing their father and their home be trashed by these creatures. These things were not playing around with his family. Hey Jeff, Luke, sorry, meant to get back to you sooner, just been tied up. So after that happened, my grandfather and his dad, who didn't see the creature in detail to know what it was, his father started dropping him off at work and picking him up till he was able to fix an old car that was sitting there. As the days went on, he only saw the creature one time sitting on the ridge which was a ways out. After that, he didn't see the thing for months, went back to his regular life, ended up marrying his girlfriend at the time, later having a son, my dad. 6 months after he was born, strange things started happening around the house, which was built on the same property. Tapping on the bedroom window, doorknobs being tested, things like that. It would happen on a nightly basis, so one night he stood up and waited for the anomalies to happen, which it did. As it was tapping on the window, he snuck out the side of the house to flank what was making that sound, and to his surprise, it was the creature from that night a couple of years back with the scar on its arm from being burned. The creature didn't see him yet, so he raised his rifle, chambering around, and as he did, the creature quickly turned and looked off as he fired. Only focused on the one that took off. He didn't see the one that was creeping up on him until it was almost too late. Baffled, there was two of them, he said, as he fired a shot at the other one, as quickly retreated into the house. Years went by with no further incident after that. A new group of walking wolves would traverse the property by the sign of the tracks, and sometimes a visual but no interaction, until one night when George, my grandfather, went into his son's room, my dad, to check on him, and there was that thing watching my dad sleep in his bed across from the window. Anger overtook my granddad as he rushed to the window. Then, being only a foot apart, separated by glass, the thing smirked and walked off. I'll send the rest of the 2 emails slot to write so I can cut some insignificant things out. If you require other information from the 2 encounters, please let me know and I will answer them. The next encounter didn't happen until my dad was 3. My dad had an imaginary dog friend that he had been seeing for months, and it would always ask him to come and play by certain gestures. My grandfather didn't think much of it until one day my dad said, "Doggy only comes at night." When it finally clicks in my granddad's head, it's one of those walking wolves. So he called a couple of his buddies and explained what had been happening. They devised a plan to try and kill it. So they got a couple of bear traps, placing them outside of my dad's window, blending into the shrubs. So night comes. My dad's fast asleep. My grandfather carries him to the other side of the house with my grandma and one of his friends as he heads back to the room with the lights out and the window open, him on an angle with his rifle pointing toward the window. One friend was in the shed 15 yards away from that window with his rifle pointed. The creature showed up, but believed it was aware of the presence of his friend in the shed, so it approached the shed instead of being said. His friend screamed as it was trying to enter. My granddad went to the window and fired a shot, ended up missing, and it took off. The creature stopped coming for a while. Dad grew up in his teens. His dad told him the history of the property and what goes on there, that he shouldn't go out at night. But like any other kid would think, he was telling him boogeyman stories to get him to come inside early. So when my gram and grandpa would go to sleep, he would sneak out of the house and meet up with his friends at the lake a quarter mile from the house. On this one night, he snuck out of the house and didn't make it 15 yards from the house. There was a figure standing by a tree 50 feet in front of him. "Who's there?" my dad said. Then the creature stepped foot into the light, and everything his dad told him started flooding in. He started slowly backpedaling as every step he took, the creature copied. As he got to his window, the walking wolf sped up, diving into his room. He quickly shut and locked the window. The creature pressed its face upon the window, licking it from top to bottom. This left my dad traumatized. He didn't speak about it for weeks. He didn't even want to leave the house. Eventually, with the help of his dad, he was able to cope. It stopped coming around for years. He didn't have any more encounters until late in his adulthood and early in mine, which I believe cost us dearly. Jeff, how have you been? Hope all is well. Sorry it took me a while to get back to you. I was hospitalized for a few days, non-COVID related. I have some lacerations from my back of my shoulder to the front. Pretty much there's going to be a scar once it heals up a little bit. Not in risk of getting infected. But that's a story for another time. Right now I have only 50% use of one arm, so I cannot type due to nerve damage. My wife Lynn is helping me, or I'll be here forever trying to type one-handed. Anyway, back to the rest of the experiences. Years went by, 20 years or so with no further encounters. Life was back to normal for my family. Then I came along. I had a normal childhood growing up, no encounters with those walking wolves that my dad, granddad, and my great-grandfather had experienced and told me about. However, at 6 or 7, I had an encounter with a woodsman, or what you would call a Bigfoot. I would play in the front near the woods, and it would watch me and I would watch it, and it would make waving motions. I never felt threatened. I would say it came to be my friend. I would go in the woods, leaving trinkets for me, and it kept the coyotes away. This went on for years into my young adulthood. I had no fear of the woods at all. I was friends with an 8-foot Bigfoot. The closest we ever got to each other was, I'd say, 10 feet. I was in my 20s at the time. My life took a change for the worst. I would spend hours in the woods more than I would spend at home. One late summer afternoon, I was in the woods looking for my friend and couldn't find him. But had this ominous feeling that I needed to head home, so I did that. I had this feeling it was watching me. So the naive me thought it was my friend, and I called out to him. 40 feet away from me was this dog-like creature crouching down in the brush looking at me. Then it stood up. It stood at 7.5 feet, maybe 8 feet tall, long muzzle, dark brown, almost black fur, sharp-looking teeth. I never felt the need to carry a weapon before, until then. Mind racing. Can I outrun this thing to my house 300 yards away? Then it points at me with those creepy finger claws. 3 more came out, and they had me completely surrounded. I was scared out of my wits. I put my hands up like fighting this thing was an option. Then a glance of something bulldozing its way through the forest, and came a mighty roar like it had come from King Kong himself. I had never heard anything like that before. Literally, it brought me to my knees and paralyzed with fear. It was my friend. Pissed. Never saw him that way. Almost looking demonic. I don't know if I've given you a description, but he's about 8.5 feet. I know this because he stood next to a tree and I measured it later. Anyway, maybe 550 to 600 pounds of all muscle from shoulder to shoulder is 4.5 feet thickness from chest to back. 2 to 3 feet red shaggy fur. No neck, traps like pyramids. He got between me and the dogfoot. We were 2 feet apart and he shoves me to leave. As I take off running, one of the smaller Dogman creatures, 6 foot or so in height, proceeds to give chase. Launching itself 8 feet into the air faster than anything known to man in my direction, passing the Bigfoot as he turned. It grabbed the back of its leg in midair, slamming this walking wolf to the ground so hard that it shook, then stomping on its head, killing it instantly. I proceed to run again as I was starting to lose sight of them as 3 were on top of my friend. Making it to the house, yelling my dad, everything had transpired. He calls my grandfather, telling him what was going on. He saw the Bigfoot on many occasions, and they had a mutual respect for each other. My granddad felt it was only right to help him since he had saved me. He went to the location that I had given him, finding the walking wolves and the woodsman, down to 2 wolves, asking if the second one was missing its bottom jaw. The woodsman, bleeding from its neck, shoulder, and stomach, losing strength, dropped to a knee as my granddad took a shot, hitting both creatures. They retreated, yelping. He didn't go near my friend. It was severely injured, and it may attack some. Some stayed with it for a couple of hours, making sure the walking wolves didn't come back, recovering some of its stamina, then stumbling off. Later that weekend, my grandmother found my grandfather mauled to death in the barn. Authorities came and said it was a cat of some sort. Fish and Game came out, and some other alphabet agency came. They were on the property for a couple of days. We mourned the death of my granddad, obviously everything else around us and what was going on the property for a while. We believe it was the ones that my grandfather had shot. I didn't have any friends at the time other than the woodsman that could have possibly died from his wounds. So my dad got a bunch of his friends who were hunters to go and kill this supposed cougar or mountain lion. They went into the woods tracking this predator they found signs of heavy gunfire and chaos that went on for about a quarter of a mile, blood spatter all over the area. This unnerved them all. They quickly abandoned their objective, not knowing whether the walking wolves were dead or alive, made us feel robbed. We never got closure. This happened in 2001. I never saw the woodsman that saved my life again. So what he's saying is, as his dad and companions were going out into the woods to try and find the cougar mountain lion, there was a government kill team already out there taking them out. I remember last night a person asked if I believe in these kill teams, and I do. I do. How else do you explain Meeker, Colorado? You know, Gary reaches out to me, tells me, hey, I've seen them once. I've seen them twice. They're in my town. They killed one in front of, my son and daughter and I saw one dead. Months go by. My buddy, who lives on the opposite side of Meeker than I do, hears a wild gun battle going on. The helicopters are in the airport. After that gun battle went on, 2 are dead. Cattle mutilations stopped, and they took off and aren't there anymore. Do I believe in them? Hell yeah. What about the Texas Border Patrol agent? You think those 2 agents who died, you think that was an accident? You think that was natural causes? No, that was because those men, I believe, killed an asset of the government, and someone had to pay. They're using these creatures to hunt humans. How do we know we're safe? We don't. We can only protect ourselves while out in the woods. So be hyper vigilant of your surroundings. Have some sort of protection with you. Not a pocket knife. Something. If you can't carry a firearm where you live, carry some bear spray and a large air horn. That just those 2 things may save you or give you time to get away. Carry one of those walking sticks that have the spikes along with the bear spray and the ultra powerful air horn. Be prepared. Boy Scout motto, Be prepared. I can't stress it enough, guys. These things are dangerous. They're out there. They're hunting humans. They literally are hunting us. They showed us how smart and intelligent they are by after they were shot by Luke's granddad. They came back and he paid the ultimate price for protecting his grandson and the woodsman. Not cool. Not cool. Anyway, guys, I hope you all enjoyed today's Mississippi subscriber submitted encounters as much as I enjoyed sharing with you. Guys, I really do appreciate all your support. With that, stay happy, healthy, safe, and everything else you want to do. May the Great Spirit watch out for us all, and may He guide us down that path that we call life. See you a little bit later on tonight, my friends.